dịch bệnh Covid sẽ có những cái thay đổi hay có những cái vấn đề như thế nào. Thế thì ngày hôm nay chị đã mời được ông Alan McGreevey từ bên Đại sứ quán tham gia với chúng ta để trả lời, giải đáp tất cả các cái thắc mắc của các bạn du học sinh, của các bạn sinh viên cũng như cha mẹ học sinh về vấn đề visa. Um, thank you, Alan, very much for your time to join our live stream today. So now I would like to ask you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Mai. And firstly, just to say, xin chào các bạn. Tôi tên là Alan McGreevey. Tôi là bí thư thứ hai ở Đại sứ quán Ireland. My name is Alan McGreevey, and I'm the second secretary at the Embassy of Ireland here in Vietnam. I'm really delighted to be joining all of you today, and I look forward to a very interactive and informative session with you. My role at the embassy has a number, is multifaceted. I am the political counsellor, I am the trade counsellor, I am the promotion officer, and I'm also the consular officer. And part of my role as the consular officer is to process visas. My background, I've been in the Irish civil service for approximately 18 years. I have had a previous role where I was posted to the Embassy of Ireland in Beijing. And in that role, I was primarily working on visas. So I have a significant experience with the processing of visas, and I hope I can bring that experience to my new role here in Vietnam.
Well, thank you, Alan, for the introduction. Các bạn thân mến, chị đã thấy là có một số trên fanpage đã có một số bạn đã join để follow cái livestream này. Các bạn có nghe rõ không ạ? Nếu các bạn nghe không rõ hay có vấn đề gì thì hãy cho chị biết ở phần comment nhé. Và trong quá trình của buổi livestream thì ông Alan cũng sẽ trả lời một số các cái câu hỏi các bạn đã gửi đến trước khi mà các bạn điền form. Thế thì trong thời gian livestream, nếu có câu hỏi gì khác các bạn có thể hãy sẵn sàng là đặt câu hỏi trong phần comment. Chị sẽ pick up những câu hỏi đó để hỏi ông Alan để trả lời cho các bạn. Và những câu hỏi nào mà bằng tiếng Việt thì chị sẽ xin phép là chị sẽ dịch lại cho ông Alan và những cái câu trả lời. Thì nếu có cái câu nào mà các bạn không hiểu, câu trả lời của các ông ấy các bạn không hiểu thì hãy cho chị biết để chị sẽ brief lại cho các bạn bằng tiếng Việt. Và bây giờ chị xin now I would like to invite you to start your presentation.
Sure, thank you, Mai. I will just share my screen. I have a short presentation. It is very focused on the visa application process. I'm sure many of you have had a lot of engagement with the Education in Ireland team and the Facebook page, and have received a lot of information about what options are available to you in Ireland and about Ireland generally itself. But I will start very kind of at a high level just to talk a little bit about Ireland, and then I'll move into the visa application process. Hopefully I'll be able to answer your questions, but we will follow this presentation by a question and answer session. And please feel free to ask any questions in the comments section under the live stream. So just to talk a little bit about Ireland first. And if you see under the logo for education in Ireland, it says world-class standards and the warmest of welcomes. And I think that really reflects what Ireland is about in terms of education. Some of the items that are listed there include our population, which is approaching 5 million people now. Ireland is an English-speaking country, and we are also a very friendly and safe environment to study. I think we have some competition with Vietnam. My experience here has been very similar. Vietnam is a very friendly and a very safe place to be. So I would say Ireland is the friendliest and safest country in the world, but having lived in Vietnam, I do think we have some competition. In terms of education, we have a long tradition in excellence in our education system. If you went back 50 or 60 years, you would find that Ireland was one of the poorest countries in Europe. During that time, the Irish government invested heavily in education. They believed that educating the people in Ireland would bring the economy forward and help us to prosper, and has certainly done that. We are now first in Europe for the completion of third level education, and also Ireland is an attractive place for companies to locate, and that is primarily due to the high level of education in our country. This slide might be difficult to read for some of you. What it lists really is all of the education, the higher level education institutions in Ireland. But what I wanted to talk about is really the size of Ireland and the accessibility of Ireland. So in the middle of Ireland, on the east coast, you will see Dublin. That is the capital city. And from Dublin, you can travel to any of the major towns or cities in Ireland within about 3 hours. So it's quite a small island, but it's a very accessible island, and transport infrastructure in Ireland is very good. This slide is a little bit old. As you can see, in 2017, there were about 16,000 international non-Irish students living in Ireland. And that represents, I believe, about 10% of the student population. That's further broken down on the bottom left-hand corner. And as you can see, about 35% of non-Irish domiciled students originate from Asia. But it's a very diverse place to study. You will be guaranteed that you would not enter a university lecture hall and be the only non-Irish person. Ireland itself is a very diverse country. So aside from students coming from abroad, there are also families who are residents in Ireland whose children will go on to third level education. And just to touch on the opportunities for students who study in Ireland, we have a stay-back opportunity for both undergraduate and postgraduate students in Ireland. I'll come to that shortly, but the opportunities there are endless. When you look at the companies that have located in Ireland, they've either placed their global headquarters or their European headquarters in Ireland. To touch on a couple of them, 9 of the top 10 global ICT companies are in Ireland, 8 of the top 10 gaming companies are in Ireland, and also 8 of the top 10 global pharmaceutical companies are in Ireland. And just to add to that, about half of the world's leading financial services firms either have their global or their European headquarters in Ireland. And also half of the top 10 companies on the Forbes list of the world's most innovative companies have also located in Ireland. They do this for a number of reasons, but one of the primary reasons is that of the high level of education that is available and the high skilled individuals that graduate through our education system. So I mentioned the work and stay back program that we have on offer in Ireland. All students may work part-time in Ireland during the course of their studies, and they may also work full-time during the holiday period. But once you complete your studies in Ireland and you graduate, you also have the opportunity to stay back if you want to try and work in Ireland. If you do an undergraduate degree, you can stay back for 12 months after completing your degree. And if you do a postgraduate degree, you can stay back for 24 months. During this time, you don't need to have a work permit. You just need to go into our immigration office and register. Also, just to note that your residence during that period of time, it's not reckonable. So if you're interested in securing a passport for Ireland, you would need to move towards a work permit. But you do not need to wait until the end of the 12-month or the 24-month period in order to apply for a work permit. If your intention is to remain in Ireland for longer than the 12 or 24 months, you can apply for a work permit, an employment permit at any stage. If you want more information on the work and stay back program, you can find it on the website of Immigration Service Delivery, and the website is linked below. So just to touch on the student visa process. So to start, the process is initially an online process. So you simply go to the website of the Immigration Service Delivery and you make your application online. It's not necessary for you to come for an interview or to be interviewed by a visa officer. Only in the most rare of cases would that be necessary. Also, to point out that you do not need to provide your fingerprints as part of your application process for an Irish visa. So when you complete your online application, you then need to pay your fee for your visa, which is €60. And then you need to post or submit your cover sheet and the supporting documents for your application. And you need to submit them to us here at the Embassy of Ireland in Hanoi. Some important documents that you need to include your family book and your birth certificate. And it's very important that those documents are original. The other documents will include your educational documents, your financial documents, and your sponsorship documents. We ask you to allow us 4 weeks in order to process your application. And what we would say is ensure that you provide us with all the documents that we require. Because if you can do that and we can process your application without having to return and request additional documentation, then we're fairly satisfied that we can process the application within 4 weeks. And again, more information about the process, about the documents, and about how to apply is available on the website of Immigration Service Delivery. It's www.inis.gov.ie. I'm happy to share this presentation with you at the end if you want to leave contact details for us. So I want to touch on some of the improvements that we've made to the student visa process over the past year or year and a half. Prior to May 2019, all of the study visa applications were processed in Ireland. So we received them here in Vietnam, but they were all processed centrally in Ireland. And thankfully, we got permission to process them here in Hanoi from May last year. So I am the person generally that will process your study visa application. We've also increased our engagement with students and agents. We see Vietnam as a real opportunity for education institutions in Ireland. And we see the opportunity for Vietnamese students to go to Ireland to study. We participated in a number of education fairs over the past year to 18 months. We also brief visa agents quite regularly on the application process and any changes that are taking place. And we conduct webinars like this one. The processing time for applications, we've managed to reduce it. In 2018, it was about 8 weeks. And last year, over the summer months, when our peak time is there, it was about 5 weeks to process an application. As you can see also, the approval rates for our student visas have significantly increased. So prior to us processing the application here at the embassy, the approval rate was quite poor. About 50% of applications were approved, which means obviously 50% were also refused. So our increased engagement with agents and with students, informing more about what is needed for an application, and having the capacity here to process the applications at the embassy allowed us to improve that approval rate. So as you can see, since May 2019, 89% of study visa applications have been approved. I think that's in line with our approval rate globally for visa applications, and I'm pretty satisfied with that increase. Another change that happened in Ireland is the re-entry visa, which is no longer required. Just to explain what that means, for Ireland, when you go through the visa application process and your study visa is approved, that study visa allows you to travel to Ireland. It doesn't allow you to stay in Ireland, it just permits you to travel. And when you arrive in Ireland, you will then be given a stamp in your passport and you'll be told to go to one of the immigration offices. There's a big one in Dublin, the capital, and there's a number of them around the country. And when you go to the immigration office, they will then give you an immigration residence permission, and that's a card, and that will be also included. Sorry, a card will also be included with that. When you receive that card, it will usually be for about 1 year for your first year of study, and then you will renew it on a yearly basis. When you have that card is now your re-entry visa. So if you leave Ireland and you want to come back in, you don't need to have a visa in your passport. You show the re-entry, you show the immigration residence card, and that card acts as your re-entry visa. So it lowers the cost for students who are studying in Ireland. I suppose the message that I want to get across, and I've said this a number of times since I arrived here in Hanoi, is that we want to work with you when it comes to the processing of visas. We're not going to take a visa application and look at it and then decide to refuse it immediately, unless there are real reasons to do so. What we will do instead is we will call you, or we will call the agency that has submitted your visa application, and we will discuss those concerns with them. We will ask them to provide us with the additional information that we need in order to approve the visa, and then hopefully we're able to proceed. And I think the improvement that we've made is evident in the approval rate moving from 50% to 89% over the past 18 months or so. So I just wanted to touch really on COVID. It's very current, even here in Vietnam, surprisingly, after such a great period. And I just want to pass my best wishes to any of you who are in Da Nang or around Hoi An and the province, and wish you the very best. And hopefully the authorities can manage this this current outbreak like they have previously done such an excellent job. In terms of the impact of COVID on student visas, there's a couple of areas I wanted to touch upon. The first one is visa processing and processing times. So in terms of visa processing, we were told by our headquarters to stop the processing of all visas when the crisis had occurred back home. Thankfully, things have improved significantly in Ireland in recent weeks. We are more or less out of any kind of lockdown. We are in what is called phase 4 of our reopening, which means that everything is more or less back to normal. There are still social distancing in place. And the only item that remains to reopen is bars. And we are hopeful that that can be done from the 10th of August. But in terms of visa processing, we have been told from this week that we can recommence processing of study visas. And in terms of processing times, we still aim to be able to process applications within 4 weeks. So that is our intention. What I would caution students and agents in regard to that is to be aware that when you arrive in Ireland, currently you're required to restrict your movements for a period of 2 weeks. So that will mean that when you arrive in Ireland, you will not be able to enter and start classes for at least 2 weeks after your arrival. So please bear that in mind when you're considering submitting your application, and factor that in to your study plan. Another slight change is English language requirements. The most common form of evidence of the standard of English language that we receive in visa applications is IELTS. There are other options in terms of TOEFL, etc. The certificate that you receive and you will submit as part of your visa application, what we had previously accepted was anything within 2 years of issue. But due to COVID, we're happy to extend that for a further year. So if you have an IELTS certificate which has, which is over 2 years old but less than 3 years old, you can submit that as part of your application. The third one is online learning. So for this semester, or this coming semester, your educational institution and the course that you choose, part of it may be online, part of it may be in class. This will be decided by the various institutions in Ireland. We want to support the institutions and ensure that we are flexible also in helping institutions manage COVID and manage the part online, part in class learning. So what we will do is we will issue your visa to travel to Ireland, and it will remain valid for 6 months. So if, for example, your course will start in September, but the first part of your course will be online, and after Christmas, your course will be in class, it will not be necessary for you to travel to Ireland until after Christmas for the second semester of the year. You should still submit your visa application before you commence your studies. You should ensure that your visa application is approved and that you are permitted to travel to Ireland after Christmas for the second semester of your studies, and that your visa application is approved before you commence your online learning. So for example, if you submitted an application today and we processed it in the next couple of weeks, we issue your visa will be valid until February 2021. If the first semester of your studies is online, you should stay in Vietnam and you should commence your studies online, and then you should arrange your travel to Ireland over the Christmas period in order to commence your in-class studies during semester 2 in the new year. This is new information that we received this week. So we're going to update our guidance material and we'll publish that on the website in due course. And I think that covers the travel to Ireland also. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the pitfalls when you're submitting your visa application or you're preparing your visa application. And I've listed 4. These are the 4 primary ones that we experience here at the embassy. And the first one relates to documents. So it's very important that the documents that you provide to us are original. And it helps to speed up the process to ensure documents are original, because if we receive copies of documents, we will return to you and we will ask you to submit the original document. Don't worry, we will take very good care of your documents. We have an excellent record in terms of maintaining our files and our documents, and in my time, it has never occurred that we have lost anyone's documents. And I know how important documents such as family books are here in Vietnam. We also require all documents to have a certified translation. And just to please be aware that if documents are missing or if documents are not in original form, it could eventually lead to a delay in the application process. The second item which we see regular issues relate to finances. Please note that if you're going to study in Ireland, you should be able to demonstrate that you can afford the costs of living in Ireland, which are estimated to be about 7,000 euros per year. So for example, we don't expect students to have savings to cover every year that they intend to study. For example, if you are going to study in Ireland for 4 years, we don't expect you to provide us with evidence of 28,000 euros in finances. We are flexible. What we want to see is that perhaps you may have access to half of that amount, and that you or your sponsor can then afford to save sufficient amount of money to cover the additional year expenses. It's also important that we see savings history. So what we will ask for is bank statements with 6 months savings history. And when I assess a bank statement, it's very important that if there is a big lump sum lodgement made to the bank account, that it is explained, and that where possible evidence showing that explanation is provided. In my experience, some parents, they may have some land or some property which they sell in order to support the student in Ireland. It's really important that evidence of that property transaction is provided that will show us the source of the finances. It's one of the bigger stumbling blocks here. We find ourselves returning to agents and to students and families to discuss finances quite regularly. And what I would say is, please prepare. If you're consider studying in Ireland, you should be making a plan in terms of your studies, and savings should be evident to us at the visa office. The third one is a really important one, and it relates to visa fraud and false information. We've been instructed by our headquarters that, you know, there is no flexibility when we see any effort to mislead, misinform, or to provide any false documentation in support of an application. And the truth is, if we do receive and we can show and we're satisfied that false documentation has been provided, it could result in a visa ban. It could result in you being banned from traveling to Ireland for a period of 5 years. And just to be aware also that Ireland and the UK share a land border, and we have a very close relationship on the immigration side. So it could also impact your ability to travel to the UK in the future. It's not necessary. I found cases where it's been completely unnecessary to provide the information that was provided. And I'll give you one example. We had an application where a student applied, and the student provided, was sponsored by both parents, and both parents provided their evidence of their employment in the form of an employment letter. And they also provided their payslips, and they provided their bank statements, which showed the salary entering the bank account. The applicant's father had a good job, and he earned enough money to support the child throughout the studies. The applicant's mother also had employment, but it wasn't significant, and it wasn't hugely important. It wasn't necessary for the mother to be in employment for the application to be approved. However, when we checked the mother's employment, it turned out that the employment letter that she provided was a false document, and that resulted in the application being refused. So it's just really important. Put your case forward, put your application forward on its own merits. We will work with you to try and address any concerns, but please don't try to provide any false information or documentation. The last one relates to late applications. And I think that speaks for itself. If an application comes in within 4 weeks, it's going to be difficult for us to process it in time. If there are extenuating circumstances, get in touch with us, explain them to us, and we will see what we can do. But, and I think it's only fair on everyone that applies, that we process applications by the date, in order of the date that they are received. So if, for example, there are extenuating circumstances and we decide to process your application before the others, it does have an impact on everybody else. So please try, if you can, not to submit any late applications. So I just have left another slide which gives you some more information. The website there for education in Ireland. Again, for the student visa requirements, and for information on the student stay-back regime, the website of Immigration Service Delivery is www.inis.gov.ie. And finally, our own embassy here in Vietnam, which will give you information on where to send your documents and some localized issues relating to visas. It can be found there at dfa.ie/Irish Embassy/Vietnam. So I think that is all from me from now, but of course, I'm going to stay online, and I'm very happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Alan, for the presentation and for the information. I'm sure that very helpful information for the students and their families. And as you know, that we have been receiving a number of questions, pre-filled questions, and also a number of questions that have been coming in during the live stream. And I would like to start by picking those out and for you to answer. First of all, I have a question from followers who sent in fill in their forms that visa, the name is Sᴛᴜᴅ, and the question is that given the situation of COVID, what is the time frame for visa processing time?
So yeah, thank you for So thank you for the question. So our processing time for visas, as I've said, has been reduced significantly over the past 18 months. We now aim to process student visas within 4 weeks of the date they are received in the office. But I would please encourage people to look at the requirements for study visas to ensure that you submit all of your documents together. Because if it is a case that we have to request additional documents or we have to return to clarify certain issues, that certainly can add to the processing time. But I'm confident that if we receive a full application, we were able to process that within 4 weeks.
Very good, very good. So it means that for those who, I also this is a question that has been echoed by a number of followers, that the time frame for visa processing, and that also have to answer the question that if they apply for their visa in August and their course start in September, would it be enough time for them to travel to Ireland? So I think that your answer clarifies this, right? Các bạn thân
Yes.
mến, các bạn có nghe rõ chưa ạ? Tức là có rất nhiều những cái câu hỏi là thời gian duyệt visa, xét duyệt visa. Thế thì ông Alan có trả lời là thời gian xét duyệt visa nếu như các cái hồ sơ mà đại sứ quán nhận được đã đầy đủ thì cái thời gian xét duyệt sẽ là 4 tuần. Như vậy có một số bạn hỏi là nếu như khóa học bắt đầu từ tháng 9 thì em có thể apply từ tháng 8 và có đủ thời gian để em sang học không? Thì đó là cái câu trả lời. Okay, so and then another question is that will the visa decision be published on the INIS website, or will the Irish Embassy in Hanoi inform me directly?
So the answer to that question is both. So you can keep an eye on the website for the result, but we don't deal with a huge number of visa applications here at the embassy. I'm trying to think back to last year, maybe 100 and 130 or 140 applications altogether. So it's not a massive amount of applications. When we deal with an application, we engage closely with the agent or with the student involved, depending on how the application was submitted. So I think, yes, the decision will be put up onto the website of INIS, but you will also probably hear from us before you see the decision on the website of INIS.
Okay, good. Thank you. Another question from someone called Đào Nguyễn Thị Hồng Hoa. A student visa is valid for 7 years, but a student would like to study for more than 7 years. Would that be possible?
My understanding, and not working in immigration, is that 7 years is the maximum length of time somebody can study in Ireland. That is my understanding, but I would probably need to check it to be 100%. I would also say that progression is very important. So if you're going to study in Ireland for a period of 7 years, I would imagine you would be studying in the area of medicine, or perhaps you would be studying a PhD towards the end. And I'm sure, even if the 7-year limit is there, that there is flexibility around that. But I'm not 100% on all of the policy in relation to studying in Ireland, but I know that in general, 7 years is considered around the maximum.
Okay, thank you. And this one question is about the translation of documents. So as per your presentation, I understand that all the documents should be notarized, translated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. All of the documents that are submitted, anything that's submitted in Vietnamese needs to be translated, and also it needs to be notarized. So this is something that I'm currently talking to our team about. It's important that we can be satisfied as to the reliability of translations. But, you know, we're always trying to be as flexible as possible. So at the moment, we're discussing the requirements with other embassies in Hanoi to see what the requirements are around translations. And we'll make a decision around being perhaps more flexible based on the information that we receive from other embassies. But for now, yes, notarized translations are required.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And this should be from a GOI IES scholarship student from Thanh Nguyễn. The GOI IES scholarship is funded by HEA. Yeah, and this student asked, how long does it take to get a visa if I already received a fully funded GOI IES scholarship?
So the length of time to process such a visa will be a similar length of time. The application will be received together with self-funded students, and it will be processed by the date it is received. What I would say in respect of this application is that if it is a fully funded scholarship, including a stipend, which covers your cost of living in Ireland, the requirement to show evidence of finances is obviously much reduced. And then the requirement to have sponsorship is also much reduced. So when it comes to checking your application and processing your application, it will be processed quite quickly, but it will still join the queue and it will be processed when that date arrives. So I would suggest that you make sure you allow 4 weeks before you travel, and also take into account the potential that you will need to restrict your movements after arrival in Ireland for a further 2 weeks.
Okay. Okay, and then some question about the saving account. I have 7,000 euro account, and would I need further financial documents from my family? It's the question from the follower named Nguyễn Hải Yến.
Okay, well, thank you for the question. It's a very good question, but my answer is it very much depends. So I'll give you 2 scenarios. If you were going to Ireland to study for 4 years on an undergraduate course and you have savings of 7,000 euros, I would not consider that to be sufficient to support you for the duration of your studies in Ireland. However, if you were going to Ireland to study a postgraduate course for a period of 1 year, 7,000 euro in savings is sufficient to cover the costs of your living in Ireland for that year. I'd also add that it's important to remember that that doesn't cover the cost of the actual course of education. So you need to pay your fees and have 7,000 euro in savings.
Okay. Yeah, I see that there have been quite a few questions coming in. So seems that we have got much interest from our viewers. Yeah, I'm sure that you will be delighted. And then we have a number of 61 viewers are now following our live stream. Các bạn thân mến, các bạn có nghe rõ không ạ? Các bạn có follow tốt những cái câu trả lời không ạ? Như vậy là có một số các câu hỏi đã được trả lời. Bây giờ chị tiếp tục chị hỏi ông Alan nhé. Các bạn cứ đặt tiếp các câu hỏi. Các chị đã nhìn thấy rất nhiều câu hỏi ở phần comment. Các bạn tiếp tục cứ gửi và chị sẽ pick, đảm bảo là chị sẽ cố gắng pick các cái câu hỏi hết sức có thể trong cái vòng thời gian, vì hôm nay chúng ta có 1 tiếng rưỡi với ông Alan cho đến 4 giờ 30. Another question is that in case a student has obtained visa but for some reason he can't fly within the allowed time, what would that student need to do?
That's a very good question, and very relevant, of course, when it comes to COVID, etc., and how things are so changeable so quickly. So I think I'll start this answer by just explaining what immigration in Ireland have done so far in respect of this issue. So anyone here in Vietnam who had a visa approved prior to, say, April, the period where Vietnam went into the kind of social isolation kind of stage, or social distancing stage, should I say, and anyone that couldn't travel to Ireland during that period, they are automatically going to receive a new visa, and that visa will have new dates for travel, and it won't cost any more. And we're trying to anticipate any issues that may arise during the second half of the year when students may go to Ireland. Ordinarily, a visa is valid for 3 months. So if a visa is issued today, it is valid until the 30th of August, September, the 30th of October. And that permits you to travel to Ireland on one occasion. It's a single entry visa. So it's just to start off your time in Ireland. To ensure that, you know, the issue of visas expiring and people not being able to travel, and to ensure that's minimalized, we've been permitted this year to put the period of validity on the visa at 6 months. So if I was to issue a visa today, it would be valid from the
31st of July.
The 31st of July until the 30th of January 2021. So it's valid for a 6-month period. Depending on what happens over the coming months, and hopefully for the next 6 months, people will be able to travel. It won't become an issue, but if it is an issue and there are genuine reasons, I'm sure, again, our headquarters will give us the flexibility to be able to help people to travel.
Okay. Yeah, another question is that a student with valid IRP returned to Vietnam during the pandemic, and would he have to return to Ireland before the IRP expires, or what happened if the IRP expired during the time he is in Vietnam?
Another great question. So just for everyone's knowledge, the IRP card is the card that you receive. It's your permission when you're in Ireland. So when you go and register with immigration there, they give you the card. And as I said, that card then acts as your visa in order to depart and come back to Ireland. This has happened to a number of people who have come back to Vietnam and their cards have expired, which means they don't have a visa to travel to Ireland. So we've also been given instruction from our headquarters to be flexible with these people, to ensure that that we issue re-entry visas to them at no additional cost. We'll waive the cost of any visa that they need in order to get back to Ireland. But there needs to be real circumstances. It needs to be genuine. Everything is genuine at the moment because of the situation that we're in. But it could be a case in November or December where somebody has decided not to go back to Ireland for other reasons, that the position might change. But as you can see, again, we're trying to be flexible. We're trying not to place any additional cost upon people. So we will issue a visa from the embassy here, which will allow you to travel to Ireland on one occasion. And we'll issue that for free for those whose IRP card has expired due to COVID.
Okay, good, great. Another question: in case a student sponsors have multiple assets and a sound savings that has been opened and maintained before the pandemic, but due to the pandemic in the last 6 months, their income sources are not as good as before, could the student still get good chance with a visa grant?
Yeah, again, a very valid question, and I think this issue will apply to almost everybody due to the pandemic. So look, we're going to take the pandemic into account when we're looking at applications and we're assessing applications. What I would say is it's difficult to give you a yes or no answer because every application is different and every application has different circumstances. But what I would suggest is that they provide us with all of the information that they can. If they're concerned that their savings have depleted so much that there might be a concern, they can write that in a cover note and they can explain to us why they feel that their current level of finances is sufficient, and why they feel that they have an established business, perhaps in the tourism industry, which they hope will recover over the coming months. And yes, we will take all of that into consideration, and we will be as flexible as we can in respect of these types of applications.
And then a question that in case where a student sponsor have a lump sum of money, I think this one already been answered, that if they already have the enough the 7,000 saving account, and they will still need the financial documents from their family, right? They still need evidence of sources of income. Yeah.
I think so. Maybe I'll just describe a couple of scenarios. Maybe it might help people. So in Vietnam, it doesn't seem very common that people save their money in bank accounts from my experience of processing visas. But it's very important for us as a visa office and working to our headquarters to ensure that we're satisfied that this money just doesn't appear in a bank account. I've had a number of applications where 1 billion VND would appear in a bank account a week before the application is submitted to us. And when we go back and we ask them to show us where the money came from, sometimes they're not able to do that. So it's very important to be able to show where the money has come from, whether it's the sale of an asset, whether it's a car was sold, a piece of land was sold, a house was sold. There is documentation that you can show to prove that you did own this house and that you did sell this house and that this is where the money came from. And once I see that and I see that the money is there, I don't have any concerns. So it's really important that if there are lump sums, that they are explained. And like I said, we ask for bank statements for a 6-month period, which will show savings or increasing savings over that period. So what I would say is think about the situation of finances from a visa officer's perspective, and then think about how you can show your finances, or how your sponsors can show their finances to satisfy what a visa officer would want to see.
Yes, and also there have been questions that the cost of living. Can you confirm that the cost of living requirement is €7 per year or 10,000 per year? 10,000, as we are speaking on that topic of financial document.
So I think the 7,000 per year is the recommendation, or it is described by the Immigration Service in Ireland. So this is what we're asked to look for. And I think when you refer to 10,000, perhaps there are differences depending on where you study in Ireland. It's more expensive to live in the capital city in Dublin, and it's cheaper to live in one of the smaller cities or the smaller towns in Ireland. But what we look for as a visa office is evidence of €7,000 per year.
Okay. Yes, and then another question is that can stamp one holder be eligible for using public services such as health services, or they still have to arrange health cover by themselves?
You do need to have health cover. So health cover usually costs, in my experience for students, about €120 per year. It is a special scheme that students can avail of. And you need to have that health cover before you arrive in Ireland. And that will cover your needs while you are there in Ireland. Ireland has a
so they would have to obtain to buy the medical insurance before they arrive.
Yes, in my experience, most of the higher education institutions in Ireland, they include the cost of medical insurance in the fee for education.
And then they would have the insurance document ready to submit together with the visa documents.
That's correct.
They would have to show proof of their insurance.
They would have to show proof of insurance. So what we ask for is the acceptance letter from the college will usually indicate to us that medical insurance is included, and for us that is sufficient. If the course of education does not include medical insurance as part of the cost, then a separate medical insurance document would need to be provided too.
Okay, I see. Yes, that's very useful information. And will parents of students currently studying in Ireland be able to obtain a visitor visa to visit their child?
Yes, absolutely. We encourage families to reunite. It can be very difficult for a student to leave their home country, perhaps sometimes for the first time, and to travel such a long way across the world. And as much as a warm and friendly people we are in Ireland, you're still going to miss home. Similar to me, I've been here since October, and I'm looking forward to getting home, or I'd love for my family to visit me here, but due to COVID, it's not going to happen. So yes, of course, we would treat them as a visit or a tourist type of application, and they can follow that procedure, and they can apply for a visa too.
And then they would send an invitation, right, to their family. They would have, in the visa document would need an invitation from the student, right?
Yes, they would. They would need to declare that their child is in Ireland and then studying in Ireland. But I suppose as a student, they would. While the invitation will be there, when it comes to finances, etc., the parents would show their documents again, and they can afford to visit it.
I see. How about the spouse and kids? A postgraduate student in Ireland, would they be able to obtain a visitor visa?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. We have no objection to families reuniting in Ireland. Visit visas are absolutely fine, but resident visas are slightly different. So it's very important to distinguish between that. A visit to Ireland can be up to 90 days, but anything longer than 90 days is considered residence in Ireland. So we encourage applications for visit visas. But if you're studying in Ireland and you want your spouse to go and live in Ireland with you, unfortunately, that is not something that would be possible.
Okay. And another question I get from, hang on just a sec, Phí Minh Trâm, I think, about whether non-EEA students, would it be possible for non-EEA students to study with state-funded secondary schools?
State-funded secondary schools in Ireland, in short, the answer is no. If you want, or your child wishes to go to Ireland to study in high school or middle school, they would need to go to a privately funded school and to pay the private fees. If you were working in Ireland, for example, if you had a work permit or if you had residency in Ireland, yes, your children can join public schools. But if your intention is to send a child to go to study in Ireland for second level studies, then the child would need to be enrolled in a private college in Ireland. And there are many private colleges in Ireland, and there are many international secondary school students in Ireland also.
Okay. I think the previous question is, another thing is that students can get visa if their chosen courses are on the ILEP, but the foundation courses provided by DIFC, Dublin International Foundation College, are not listed in ILEP. Would this mean students would face some kind of risk if choosing such programs?
That's an interesting question. So my understanding is that the DIFC foundation programs, they lead into an undergraduate program. So we have no objection to the foundation programs, and I have processed visa applications for these foundation programs both here and in my time in Beijing. So I think the issue here is that the foundation program is a foundation program, but the undergraduate program is what the foundation student will progress to once they pass the foundation program. And the undergraduate program is the program that would be the recognized program.
Okay, I see. Okay. Các bạn thân mến, có rất là nhiều câu hỏi và chị cũng thấy là có một số các cái câu hỏi đã được đặt ở bên fanpage của Đại sứ quán. I also received questions that are from the viewers from the Irish Embassy fanpage. So I think I will read them out here for you. Các bạn thân mến, là chị bây giờ bắt đầu đang đọc những cái câu hỏi từ trên fanpage Đại sứ quán. Các bạn thấy là chị có 2 cái điện thoại để có thể trả lời I am now on 2 phones at the same time, and I'm sure that you'll be delighted with the interest to your visa session.
Great.
Có một bạn tên là Bông Nguyễn hỏi là when will visa issue for students who study in fall 2020?
Sorry, Mike, can you repeat that one?
When will visa issue for students who study in fall 2020?
So for students who are going to study this fall, their first semester will be this fall. We are processing the visas from this week. So we've already commenced processing the visas that we have on hand, and we would encourage anyone who is planning to study in Ireland this year to submit their visa application as soon as possible, whether or not the first semester is online or in class. I just want to go over that part again. It can be a little bit confusing, and it's important that people are aware of this new requirement. So we've asked all the high-level education institutions in Ireland to be very clear in terms of how the course will be delivered this year. So for example, if the first semester of your course will be delivered online, and then after Christmas, the second semester will be delivered in class, you should still submit your visa application as soon as possible. It's very important that you have your visa before you commence your online studies. But I'd also like to make it very clear that we've been told by our headquarters that if students will be doing their first semester online, they should not travel to Ireland in order to do that first semester online. They should stay in Vietnam, complete the first semester online by distance, and then travel to Ireland after Christmas if their second semester is in class. And as I've said, our visas will be issued for a period of 6 months. So that means, as I said, a visa that's issued today will remain valid until the 30th of January 2021. And that will allow the student to travel to Ireland in advance of that for the second semester, should their first semester be online. Okay?
Okay, let me brief this quick answer to in Vietnamese because I think it's very important.
Yeah.
Các bạn thân mến, là câu trả lời như vậy là chúng ta đã có cái khẳng định như vậy là đến lần này lần thứ 3, tức là ông Alan có khẳng định là khi các bạn bắt đầu năm học tới thì các bạn hãy apply, hãy nộp hồ sơ xin visa càng sớm càng tốt. Mặc dù là các trường đại học Ireland thì sẽ có những cái thông tin về khóa học. Các trường đại học bây giờ đã hầu hết các trường đều đã có thông báo về cái ngày bắt đầu khóa học của năm học tới, nhưng mà các bạn hãy apply visa càng sớm càng tốt. Thậm chí là có những cái chương trình là học online vào học kỳ 1 và học offline vào học kỳ 2, nhưng các bạn vẫn cứ xin visa để rồi sau đến học kỳ 2 sau Giáng sinh các bạn có thể đi sang Ireland khi mà trường học trở lại học offline, bởi vì rằng là cái kỳ hạn của visa bây giờ thì đại sứ quán sẽ cấp là trong vòng cái hạn đó là 6 tháng chứ không phải 3 tháng như trước đây nữa. Thành ra là sẽ cho phép nếu như các bạn xin visa trong tháng 8 này thì visa của bạn sẽ chỉ hết hạn vào cuối tháng 1. Như vậy sẽ vẫn đủ thời gian cho các bạn đi sang để học những ngày bắt đầu học kỳ 2. Chị hy vọng là cái câu trả lời này nó rõ, bởi vì có khá là nhiều các cái câu hỏi có cùng một cái mối quan tâm tương tự, và chị nghĩ là nó là rất là xác đáng. Tiếp theo một another question from will the government of Ireland have any plan to support international students? I think this one would be, I think I can answer this one together with another one by Minh Phạm. Will international students receive allowance this fall to cover the loss of COVID? Các bạn thân mến, về chủ đề hỗ trợ sinh viên quốc tế bị ảnh hưởng bởi đại dịch COVID thì những cái sinh viên mà đi làm thêm trong thời gian khóa học mà bị mất việc làm do ảnh hưởng của Covid. Ví dụ như có một số bạn đi làm việc ở các cái nhà hàng làm thêm mà cái nhà hàng đấy phải đóng cửa do dịch bệnh Covid, thì các bạn có được phép xin cái hỗ trợ này là, nếu mà chị nhớ không nhầm, là 350 euro một gì đó, và nhưng quan trọng nhất là các bạn có thể tìm hiểu những cái thông tin này trên trang web Education in Ireland, www.educationinireland.ie. Ở trên đó có một mục về các thông tin về hỗ trợ sinh viên quốc tế trong đại dịch Covid. Thông tin đó được cập nhật rất thường xuyên và có bao gồm tất cả những cái thông tin mà các bạn quan tâm này. Các bạn hãy theo lên trang web Education in Ireland. Ngoài ra, Education in Ireland Việt Nam trên Facebook, trên tất cả các cái kênh của Education in Ireland Việt Nam cũng đều cập nhật thường xuyên tất cả các cái chính sách của chính phủ Ireland hỗ trợ sinh viên quốc tế. Và đây đã được đánh giá là một trong những cái nước mà có hỗ trợ sinh viên quốc tế tốt nhất trong thời kỳ đại dịch Covid, nên các bạn hãy yên tâm với cái sự lựa chọn điểm đến du học của mình. Okay, so now đó là những cái câu hỏi của các bạn ở trên. Those are the questions from the Irish Embassy fan page, and now I come back to the questions on our Education in Ireland Vietnam. Thank you, Trang Nguyễn, for your compliment that about the two thumbs up for the excellent support from the Irish government. Thank you. Rất cảm ơn Trang, mọi người ở đây để hỗ trợ. Và yes, và chị tự tin nói rằng là Ireland là một trong những nước có hỗ trợ sinh viên quốc tế tốt nhất thế giới, không chỉ trong thời kỳ đại dịch Covid. Cảm ơn tất cả các bạn đang theo dõi và đang đặt câu hỏi. Hy vọng là những cái câu hỏi của các bạn gửi đến thì chị đã đáp ứng được phần nào. Hiện giờ thì chị đang tiếp tục đọc các cái câu hỏi cho ông Alan.
Mai, can I just jump in? I think it might be useful for people to hear a little bit about COVID in Ireland. It's very topical at the moment.
Yes, okay.
I think, you know,
go ahead.
I think it's important because obviously different parts of the world are under different stages of COVID, and I'm sure people are interested, particularly students who are thinking about going to Ireland, to discover where Ireland is in terms of COVID and how things stand. So Ireland, like most of the world, went into a lockdown in late March and came out of it in early May. So we started a 4-phase reopening from the 18th of May. We're now in phase 3, which means most of the country is back to normal. Most businesses are back open. And there are obviously social distancing in place, and we encourage people, like here in Vietnam, to wear masks when in crowded places and on public transport. And in total, the number of cases in Ireland, we did go through a difficult phase. The total number of cases in Ireland is about 26,000 at the moment, and about 1,750 people passed away in Ireland due to COVID. What I would say is that Ireland has been extremely transparent, just like Vietnam. We have been very transparent to the public and to the world in terms of numbers. And they've actually done some research in Ireland in terms of the normal death rate during the course of a year and compared it to this year. And the actual number of deaths is actually about half the 1,750. So it could be that other reasons were contributory to the death figures, which would bring it down significantly. But as things stand, we are seeing the numbers of cases ranging between 5 and about 20 cases per day. We had a small increase yesterday. I think we had about 50 cases yesterday, which is a little worrying, but hopefully it is just one small area that is going to be dealt with fairly quickly. And what Ireland focuses very much on is what is called the R rate, or the reproductive rate of the virus. And Ireland's aim is to keep the R rate below 1. And if you go above 1, that means that if I have COVID, I will give it to one person plus So for example, 1.5 would mean I would give it to 1.5 people. So Ireland's focus is to keep the R rate below 1, which means that for every person that does get COVID, they will give it to less than 1 person. And that's about suppressing the virus. So we are relatively happy with where we are. Phase 4 is the final phase, which will be on the 10th of August. And all that remains to be opened in phase 4 is bars in Ireland. They're the only businesses that are waiting to reopen. So that's the situation with COVID in Ireland. We did go through a difficult period at the start, but we contained it very well. And our rates at the moment are amongst the lowest in Europe. And we have taken quite a cautious approach to reopening. Other countries in Europe took a much quicker approach to reopening. And if you follow the COVID news closely, you'll know that some of those countries have seen increases in cases, and we don't want to see that in Ireland. We are an island and we have an opportunity to protect ourselves, a better opportunity than others. So we're hopeful that we can continue the good work that we're doing and continue that progress.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and there's have been a number of questions on the issue of family book and birth certificate. Someone, bạn Julie Nguyễn Trần, she was not aware that because from the website, she is not aware that she would have to send in the original family book and birth certificate. So can she now supplement that?
Yes, absolutely. If the application has already been received, you can send any additional documents in at any time. What we'd ask you to do perhaps is just put a small cover note with the documents and include the visa application number, the reference number, so we can ensure that we receive them. And of course, I'd advise you strongly to use a secure method of postage. If you're around Hanoi, you can drop them in person, but please track your postage, make sure that it's secure and that it's received by us and you can see that. Okay?
And questions on a similar topic from Iʀᴇʟᴅ. Are you right? Are you right there? You right there? Yeah, good. Maybe take a sip of water then. There's still not questions to come.
Of course.
But that is good sign, right? You know, because much of interest to study in Ireland. And on the topic of family book, from the question we got from Iʀᴇʟᴅ, family book is very important document to most Vietnamese family. We all need family book when using government services. 4 weeks are quite long time to keep it. Could we submit it later when receive the request from officer so that you might only keep it for 1 week?
I do appreciate the question. Firstly, I know how important the book is. It's really, really an important document. And when we do receive it, we will handle it with care and we will ensure that it is safe and we will ensure that you get it back. It's a good suggestion that the student doesn't need to submit it initially, but unfortunately that would mean additional work for us. It would mean that we would have to contact and we would have to get the document and then we would have to associate it with the file. We would probably have to make a photocopy. There's quite a lot involved. So an alternative would be that you submit all of the documents together with the visa application. And if you need the family book back in the meantime, you can contact us and on a case-by-case basis, we could send the family book back. We can do a review of it and we could send it back. So what we'd ask is if you could be patient and wait for the 4 weeks, but if you do need it for another service in the meantime, just give us a call. We'll pull it out of the application and we can send it back to you.
Okay, and a question I got from Thảo Nguyễn Phương. Does visa applicant need to prepare COVID-19 test certificate?
So at this point in time, there's no requirement for a visa applicant to prepare a COVID-19 test certificate. When you travel to Ireland and you arrive in Ireland, you will be asked to complete a passenger locator form, and then you'll be asked to restrict your movements for a period of 2 weeks. And that means that when you arrive in Ireland, you will provide your address, the place that you will stay, to the immigration officer. And then you will make your way to that address and that you will stay at that address for a period of 14 days and you will restrict your movements. It does permit you to go outside for exercise, but you should wear a mask and you should keep 2 meters away from anybody else during that period. So there is no mandatory requirement for a COVID-19 test at this time. I know many governments are starting to introduce this requirement. I'm not aware of Ireland introducing it right now. I'd also like to mention that some of the options in terms to travel to Ireland could include a requirement to have a COVID-19 cert. Some of those options at the moment would include if you were to travel through the United Arab Emirates. So if you were to travel with Etihad or travel with Emirates, in order to transit through Dubai or Abu Dhabi, you need to be in possession of a COVID-19 cert that is issued within 96 hours of your departure from Vietnam. The other transit hubs going to Ireland do not require COVID-19 certs at this time, but this is very much changeable. So please check with ourselves or with your own travel agents, etc., before you depart to Ireland.
And one question from Sᴛᴜᴅ: can I use my company address as current address because I don't have a specific address in Ho Chi Minh City?
Yes, you can use your company address as your current address. Your family book will provide additional information in respect of your residence and where you're registered. So I don't see there being any issue with you using a company address for the purpose of sending your documents.
Okay, and then another question from Hiếu Nguyễn: if we have applications that have been submitted for more than 4 weeks, are there anything we can do to follow up or check on the status of the application? Please note that some of the students will need to inform their workplace about their resignation 45 days in advance, so they will need to know the result as soon as possible.
So firstly, to say to those who need to hand in notice to companies, etc., this will need to be factored in as part of the application process. They need to factor this time frame in along with the 2 weeks restricted movements in Ireland. So it's important to think about all these things before submitting the application. We hope we can process applications within 4 weeks. If all documents are provided, we aim to process applications within 4 weeks. Who knows what can happen that could delay applications, etc. If that does happen, and you need to find out the status or you need an update, it's not something you can look on an internet website to check. You need to give us a call. Our offices are open Monday to Friday between 9 and 4:30. You can call at any stage, and we can have a look and see where the status is. I'd also say that applications that that have gone beyond the 4 weeks, and there are reasons why you need the application processed, bring forward those reasons to us. We hope this doesn't happen. We want to process applications within 4 weeks, but we want to work with you as well. And if it's a case that we go to 4.5 weeks and someone desperately needs the application processed and needs to travel or needs the documents, get in touch with us and tell us, and we'll do our best for you, okay? Similarly, for those who perhaps apply late for the visa, we don't encourage it, but if there are extenuating circumstances and there are reasons why the application was submitted late and there is reasons why the application needs to be processed quickly, get in touch with us, talk to us. We'll do our best to try and support you, but we're also mindful of the fact that if we do prioritize your application, it impacts everybody else. So we need to be fair at the same time. But do contact us and talk to us, okay?
Good answer. And another question from Tuấn Anh: for students who need to do pre-sessional English course, can they submit a visa application with a conditional letter of acceptance?
Yes, if you have to do pre-sessional English language and you have a conditional offer letter from the college, we're happy to accept, absolutely.
Okay, and then I have a number of questions here. Có một số bạn hỏi về cái cách điền đơn, cách điền form online, thì chị nghĩ rằng là các bạn có thể tìm hiểu bởi vì là chúng ta dưới này còn rất là nhiều các cái câu hỏi nữa, thì chị sẽ xin phép là tập trung vào những cái câu đó. I would like to receive the email confirmation from officer when receiving our visa document. Normally, I call directly to follow up, but I'm afraid it would take your time to answer a lot of calls.
Sorry, just to repeat or just to clarify, Mai, is this when an application has been approved and
yes,
documents are being
the
returned?
email, they would like to receive email confirmation when receive visa document. Normally, they call directly to follow up.
So just to clarify, is this to receive when the documents are received here at the embassy, or is this when the documents are being issued by the embassy?
I think from this I read, my understanding of this is that they would like to receive the confirmation of visa, confirmation of reception of visa documents.
Okay.
Whenever you receive the document, you would inform the applicant, right?
So yeah, this is probably not something that is done in every case. What I'd suggest is if you have concerns about documents being received or transmitted, please use a service when you're submitting those documents that can be tracked, such as DHL. And that will give you the satisfaction that the documents have been received by the embassy. I will talk to our team to see if it's something that we could put in place. But as you've said, it could take a lot of time for us to send an email confirming receipt of documents to everyone who submits an application at the embassy. We receive over 1,000 applications every year. It would just add to a lot. It would add a significant amount of work. So I think in the first instance, if people are concerned about documents not arriving, if they can use a service that they can track the status of their documents as they're being delivered to the embassy, that should give them sufficient satisfaction that documentation has been received here. But like I said, I'll talk to the team and see if perhaps we could adjust something. Unfortunately, our IT systems don't give us this auto function. They're not as modern as we would like them to be. And if that was put in place, it would be fantastic. And I'm sure any future system would have that. But it would be very manual in terms of notifying agents and students of the receipt of documents individually. But leave it with me. I'll see if we can do something. But in the meantime, I would suggest if you're sending documents, use a service that you can track in order to satisfy yourself that the documents are safely arrived.
Yeah, very good answer, Alan. I know that you are very busy with many different roles you are playing, and I'm sure that our viewers, our students, and agents all appreciate your hard work in supporting them. Following, I have a number of other questions. I have questions from a follower named Vɪssszō. For the ideal scholars, do we have to wait further instruction from the embassy for the visa procedure, or can we just go ahead by ourselves?
Hello, and congratulations on winning one of the scholarships. For those of you who don't know, Ireland have a scholarship program here in Vietnam that has been going on for over 10 years. About 300 Vietnamese students so far have completed master's study in Ireland under the Government of Ireland scholarship scheme. It's a fantastic scheme, and it is a fully covered scheme in terms of it covers all of your fees and all of your living costs for the duration of your stay in Ireland. It's valued at, I think, 25,000 per student or something like that. So this year, if any students or any agents are interested in promoting it, keep an eye on our Facebook page. We usually start the process after the summer, and we will promote it on our social media channels. But just to answer the question, I was discussing it with my colleague Huang, who I'm sure you've probably been in touch with, and she is going to send an email to all of those scholars who will travel this year over the coming days, giving some information and some instructions on what to do in terms of the visa application process. So what I'd say is hold off and wait until you hear from Huang, who's going to email all of those who will travel under the scholarship scheme over the coming days. Okay.
Okay, thank you. The ideal scholar, I'm sure that they will be waiting for Hương, who should be very busy preparing for their trip now. All right. Another question from Dinga. Can high school students apply for visa to study at high school in Ireland? And what is the requirement of English level and saving money?
Okay, so for high school students, so just to explain Ireland's context, so Ireland has primary school and it has secondary school, and secondary school is middle school and high school together. So secondary school in Ireland, if a student wishes to go and study at secondary school in Ireland, they need to go to a privately funded secondary school, not a publicly funded school. So they would have to apply to that school for a place, and they would have to discuss with that school what the English language requirements are. From a visa perspective, we do not need to see any evidence of English language, but what we do need to see is that the school are satisfied that the level of English language is sufficient for the student to commence studies at the school. So it's not required that you need to provide IELTS test results, etc., for second level study, but there will probably be an interview or a discussion between the school and the student to satisfy them that the student has the ability to communicate through English and then would be able to study in Ireland.
I have a question from Vân Anh Đào. How much is the minimum monthly income which the students have to demonstrate to the embassy when the student when they study undergrad program or postgrad program? So the requirement of monthly income, minimum monthly income, would it be different with undergrad and postgraduate?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about monthly income, particularly if you talk about an undergraduate student, generally we're not looking at the student's monthly income. It's the sponsor's income that we're concerned with. And it's very difficult to give you an exact figure. We look at every application on their own merits. For example, if a sponsor for an undergraduate student had a huge amount of savings or had a huge amount of property, perhaps inherited property or for whatever reason, and their level of monthly income was very low, that's not a concern to us. We're satisfied that the sponsor has enough money to support the student for the duration of their studies. In a different circumstance, if parents had a high monthly income and very few assets, had no property, had no car, had no land, and had limited savings, had some savings but limited, but had very high monthly income, that also would potentially be fine. We'd be happy that they'd be able to save the money and be able to support the student for the duration of studies. So I'm sorry, it's impossible for me to give you an exact figure in terms of what is satisfactory or not. But I think I'd like you to all go away today and understand that, we want to work with education agents and students, and we want to get students' applications over the line. So we will work as best we can with flexibility. But there are limits to that. Somebody coming forward and providing us with a massive lump sum deposit, and being unable to explain it, and then having low income, that presents difficulties for us. And I'm sure that you can understand that from our perspective also.
And while we are on this topic, I see that we have a question from Daisy. This person has a similar question, that would they need to submit documents relating to my parents' income and properties, land, cars, or only need to submit saving book?
So firstly, Daisy is a very unique Vietnamese name. I haven't heard it before. So again, it depends on the nature of the application. So for example, if Daisy was currently here in Vietnam and was working in a company, and Daisy wished to go and do postgraduate studies in Ireland, perhaps Daisy can afford to support herself for the duration of studies, which means that she would have her own savings and would not need to rely upon a sponsor. And then in a different circumstance, the parents or the sponsor may need to provide us with evidence. So again, depending on where the sources of finance are, we don't need to see evidence of property for every single application. What we need to see is that the sponsor has sufficient finances to be able to support the course of study. And it's as simple as that. If you have lots of property, that's great, and that supports the application. But if you have sold your property and you provide us with a bank certificate which shows the savings, and you also provide us with evidence that the property was sold, that's also sufficient. So again, it depends on the application. But if there are enough savings, and the savings are there for a long period of time, it's not necessary to provide all the property certificates because the evidence is already there. It supports it, but it's not necessary to provide.
Okay, great. And then I have a question from Minh Hằng that she wants to ask if she has a visa to study in Ireland, then her flight transit through Japan, France, or Germany. What if that country does not accept transit due to COVID-19?
Yeah, this is something that I'm dealing with on a daily basis over the past few months because my role on consular also involves consular assistance, primarily for Irish people who are looking to travel home. So what I would suggest is you check very closely before you book your flights and you ensure that transit is possible. As you will know, transit through Vietnam is not possible at the moment. Transit through Thailand is not possible at the moment. I'm trying to think of the others which are restricted. The ones you mentioned, I think, are okay. But for Ireland, people that are traveling to Ireland, they'll generally travel from Vietnam. They'll go through Seoul and then on to London, or they'll go to Qatar, or they'll go to Dubai. And the issue that people need to be aware of in respect of those three is Dubai. Dubai require a COVID-19 certificate in order to travel. I'd also flag the fact that Vietnamese nationals need a visa in order to transit the United Kingdom. So be very careful on the flight that you book and the visa and travel restriction requirements that are placed upon Vietnamese citizens. What I'd suggest is to touch base with the local embassy, the local Vietnamese embassy in the country in which you propose to transit, and find out if there are any transit restrictions at that time for Vietnamese nationals or if there are any visa requirements for Vietnamese nationals.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And a question from, and we got an answer from Daisy that thank you very much. So,
very welcome.
And a question from Holly Loon. IRP for language students is for 8 months only, but can they apply for a 1 or 2 year language course and so are eligible to work while studying?
So English language students are eligible to work while they're studying. All students are allowed to work for 20 hours a week during the time that they are studying, and they're entitled to work for 40 hours a week during their holiday periods. In terms of the 8-month period that language students are permitted under the IRP card, this is something that I'm not 100% familiar with. This is a decision that is made by immigration after you arrive in Ireland. I know from my experience in the past that it wasn't uncommon for English language students to be given a 1-year permission. And I think, to be honest, it depends on the length of the English language course, when that course begins and when that course ends. That determines the length of the permission. But it's something I could perhaps take away. I could ask some questions in Ireland and I could come back. I do know that the maximum time you can study English language in Ireland is a period of 3 years. So there's nothing stopping you from applying for a further English language course after that 8-month period, which would then extend your permission to be in Ireland accordingly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now Tuấn Anh asked a question regarding to financial document. If students pay their full tuition fee, they will only need to prove their living cost of 7,000 euro. Is my understanding correct?
Yes and no. So again, I'll give you 2 scenarios because with finances, it's always dependent on the type of course of study and the individual circumstances. So if you were going to study for 1 year, postgraduate study, and you have paid all of your fees up front, all you need to show is €7,000. If you're going for a 4-year undergraduate study and you have paid your first year fees up front, you still need to show savings or the ability to save €7,000 for every year that you're there, plus the fees that it will cost you to study in Ireland for subsequent years. Now, I want to clarify that and say that I do not want to see, you know, the 4 years fees and the 4 years savings, or the 4 7,000s provided to me in savings. I don't need to see all of that. I need to see some of it, and then I need to see that the sponsor has a good job and has the ability to save more money, or has assets that they can sell to support the education. So again, it just depends on the application itself. But if it's a straightforward postgraduate application and you have paid all of your fees, then €7,000 is all I want to see.
And from the same follower, Tuấn Anh, that he also asked another question, that if students get their visa granted and their university deliver face-to-face teaching, can they travel to Ireland for study?
Yes, if the university, so the universities have been asked to be very specific in terms of what the makeup of the course of study will be this year, and it's quite important. So if the university make it clear that classes will involve face-to-face teaching for both semesters this year, absolutely, you need to travel to Ireland and be in Ireland before your first semester commences, in order to ensure that you can restrict your movements for 2 weeks in advance of your studies.
Yes, and thank you for that. A follower with name Tuha, she asked whether if the parent would like to fly together to accompany their child in the study to commence the year, so would they have to apply for their visa together in the same document with the child, with the student? Or is it different, two different visa documents for the parents and the student?
So again, this is something that we welcome, that we've no objection to, but it's very important that the parents can show us their obligations to return to Ireland. With visa applications, there's always a small amount of risk, so we look at risk. But I can tell you for sure, I've granted parents to travel to help their children to settle into Ireland last year. And I'm more than happy to do it again this year. In terms of the timing, you could submit the applications together. You could submit 3 visa applications together, 2 tourist or visa visit applications and 1 study application. Or alternatively, you could wait until the study application has been approved, and then you could submit the tourist or the visit application for the parents to travel with the child in order to commence study. For visit type applications, we aim to process the applications within 10 days. So within 2 weeks of receipt, we aim to process that type of application. But it might be more efficient for the family to submit them all together with all of the documents, and then we can assess everything in one go, instead of having to submit the documents again for a second round of applications. But completely up to the parents themselves on how they would like to proceed.
And a follower named Trần Thiện Nhân has a question that I submitted my visa application on July 23rd without the family book. Can I add this document later to support the application? I think this question has been answered, right? That they can supplement the family book and other document that they missed.
Yeah, you can send the family book to us. If you post it to us, you can please just include a short cover letter, include the visa application number. Or if you want to wait, we will contact you. We will need to see your family book before we process the application. So if you want to wait, we will be contacting you and seeking that family book. But it might be more efficient for you to send it to us as soon as you can.
Okay, and a follower named Mark Moon asked, will students be interviewed in Vietnamese or English? I think they missed your presentation that there would be no interview for visa processing at the Embassy of Ireland, right?
That's right, yeah. So just to repeat that part, in terms of you applying for a course of study in Ireland, Perhaps there will be interviews with the higher education institution in Ireland. But when it comes to applying for a visa, you do not need to attend in person. There is no interview unless we need to, for any specific reasons, do an interview, but it's very, very rare. You do not need to provide your fingerprints for the application. You simply apply for your visa online. You print off the form, you sign the form, and you send that form with all of your documents to us by post, or you can drop them into us here at the embassy if you're in Hanoi, and we will commence the processing from there. If there's engagement with you after you submit the application, if we need more documents or we have some clarifications, one of our team here, one of our local staff will call you, and that engagement will be through Vietnamese.
I think questions seem to still pouring in, but because we are close to the end of our time, so I will take this last question from Hà Vũ. My visa will be expired at the end of this September. However, if I choose online study, may I need to apply again when coming back to Ireland? I'm a fourth-year student at DIT.
Okay, so I'm going to answer it, but I'm just going to clarify it by kind of giving my assumption of the question. So you're in your fourth year in DIT. It's possible that the first semester this year will be online and the second semester will be in class. In that case, you should apply for your visa to re-enter Ireland before your visa expires. Sorry, before your IRP card expires, you should apply for a visa to re-enter Ireland. We'll issue you with a 6-month visa, which will allow you to enter Ireland on one occasion, and that will cover you up until February, March next year. And if you need to travel back to Ireland to do your classes in semester 2, which will be after Christmas, that will facilitate you to do so. And we will not charge you for that visa either.
Okay, okay. Well, okay. I have one more last question.
Sure.
From Trang Educo. Trang ơi, đây, chị take your question. Please ask Alan my question of Duolingo. Will it be accepted for January 2021 as well?
Hello, Trang ơi. Yes, Duolingo is also being accepted. So as I've said, in terms of English language requirements, usually what people do is an IELTS exam. And what our policy has been is to accept an IELTS certificate that is valid within 2 years. That has been extended by a further year. So anyone who has IELTS for the past 3 years, that is now acceptable. But we are also accepting Duolingo. Duolingo is being accepted for entries this year. For entries after December into January 2021, I'm not sure if it will still be accepted at that stage. That's a decision that would have to be taken by our headquarters. But for now, we are absolutely accepting Duolingo in support of the English language requirement for visa applications.
Okay, let me speak in Vietnamese to my followers. Hà Vũ ơi, chị ơi, có cái câu trả lời của anh ấy đã trả lời được chưa? Hà Vũ, are you satisfied with the answer? About visa expired during the time that the student is back in Vietnam, and while they study online. So would they need to reapply when they coming back to Ireland, right? Okay, it seems that she's satisfied with the answer. Okay, so I know that we still have many questions from our followers, which show that the interest for study in Ireland is increasing now, and no, but the time is short, is limited. So I would like now to, on behalf of the followers of Education in Ireland Vietnam fan page, I would like to thank you, Alan, very much for your time, for your presentation, and your reply to all the answers. And I'm sure that all the followers, the students, and their parents very much appreciate your hard work and your support. Now, I would like to ask you to speak to the followers.
Yeah, so just to wrap up, I suppose if I give you one message to take away today is that the embassy is here to support. We're encouraging increased levels of education and more students from Vietnam to go and to study in Ireland. We see it as a huge opportunity for our two countries to become closer, and we will do everything we can to support that. I hope you can see that we have made the process better. We've improved our approval rate, we've improved our processing time, and we have a commitment to working with agents and with students to get visa applications over the line. So the last thing I would say is don't consider the visa application as something to be afraid of. It's absolutely not. If you have a genuine reason that you want to go to Ireland, we're here not to block that, but to facilitate it. Okay? So thank you all very much for joining. I really enjoyed it, and I hope we can do it again soon.
Okay, thank you. Xin cảm ơn tất cả các bạn đã theo dõi. Chị có thấy rất là nhiều những cái lời cảm ơn của các bạn đang. I have seen many comments of thank you for your presentation. Cảm ơn tất cả mọi người đã theo dõi và đã đặt câu hỏi và đã đồng hành cùng Education in Ireland Việt Nam. Education in Ireland Việt Nam luôn luôn sẵn sàng lắng nghe tất cả những cái góp ý, gợi ý của các bạn. Nếu có bất kỳ câu hỏi, thắc mắc hay những gợi ý gì để cho chúng tôi làm việc được giúp đỡ được mọi người tốt hơn thì hãy đừng ngần ngại, hãy cho chúng tôi biết. Hãy follow fanpage Education in Ireland Việt Nam, tham gia nhóm du học Ireland để trao đổi cùng tất cả thành viên trong nhóm đó. Và có một thông tin mới là 1 phút dành cho quảng cáo, là hãy theo dõi TikTok của Education in Ireland Việt Nam, đó là Education Việt Nam VN. Chị Mai sẽ có quà cho những ai follow. Xin cảm ơn và thank you everyone, thank you Alan and have a great weekend. Chúc mọi người một cuối tuần vui vẻ.